Hi guys and girls, in this video I'd like to go over 30 accessories to consider getting for your Maverick X3. These can be used on any Can-Am Maverick X3. My particular model is a Maverick X3 XRS Turbo RR with smart shocks. But these accessories are all things to consider for having fun, for utility, for safety, and for reliability. Links to all these accessories are going to be down below, as well as pricing. I've owned this machine for a little over a year and a half, so this is what I've found to work well and what I've liked so far with the type of riding that I do. Most of the riding that I do is out on the trails. I'm from Michigan, so we do a lot of dirt riding trails, but I do get out to the dunes every once in a while. So there's going to be a nice mix of different accessories to work with all of those different scenarios. So starting in the front and working our way back, I'll begin with the OEM pre-runner front bumper. This is from Can-Am. This thing has been great because it has a few mounting positions for several other accessories. It looks good and it protects all the way around. Next, I pulled off the cable and changed it out to a synthetic line. That works a lot nicer, a lot better for your fingers, and a lot less dangerous. Don't have any kinking. You know how it is, but the synthetic cable is a definite worthy upgrade. Don't forget, when you change over to a synthetic winch line, you do have to take off the rollers that come with a cable winch line and change it out to a Hawse Fairlead, which is this style here. Next accessory in the front is a flag mount with a quick disconnect end on it. That attaches to the flag and it can just be quickly latched on and off. Doesn't require nutting and bolting every time. Definitely a time saver and worth it if you're going to be hitting the dunes pretty often. This particular one works perfectly on the front of this front runner bumper, and it clears, and it does create a rub point, however, so I started putting something around the flag to prevent that from getting worse. It's the only thing about it. Next are these Auxbeam dual 3-inch pod lights. I just routed the wiring down through and underneath, as you can see, right above the winch, and brought it up near the typical wiring harness and around inside, and I just had the switches right here. So the left switch is for the upper shock tower light, which we'll get to in a second. The middle one is for those pod lights, and then the one on the right is the stock lights. So the next accessory is the Tusk shock tower mount and 12-inch light bar. So that shock tower mount does exactly that, connects to the shock tower itself, and then runs the wiring down and underneath and through. It works very well. The only thing about it, I mean, it lights up nicely, but one thing to note is you really have to keep it tight. Sometimes it vibrates loose, and when it starts getting loose, the vibration at night, you see the lights almost flickering. It does get a little bit annoying, but in general, it's overall a good light and a good concept for making it able to see better at night. Now, in regards to lights, I also did add rock lights, and these particular ones, I got a 8 quantity, so I created a mount to put underneath the front hood scoop. That works really well and lights up the whole entire radiator. And then we've got these underneath on both sides, and I put them underneath the front seats as well. Let's see if I can get to that, just to show off where it is. Hit it so well, I almost forgot where I put it, but I've got it stashed right up underneath there, and it works well, lights up this whole entire cavity. On the other side, similar spots underneath, ran it right there, routed the wires around down through the center console. So working our way around to the back, I created these mounts too. That just helps line up the lighting a little bit better to go right over the tires themselves. You can kind of see a little bit better in this whole area. Put another rock light right above the muffler, so it lights up this whole area. You got it stashed right there. Mounts right up in there pretty nicely. You don't have to add any extra hardware through it. There's actually a mounting spot right there to hide them. And the last rock light on the back left side, stashed underneath there. So those are good spots. They don't tend to get too dirty. Every once in a while I just have to wipe them off, but in general they keep the underside of the machine pretty well lit. And actually I should add in that the controller has stashed down here, so it's nice and close to the battery. Another upgrade item that I want to make mention of is Black Ops machine heavy duty ball joints, and specifically the lower ball joints. Definitely worth adding on, especially if you're hitting the dunes pretty hard. I found the stock ones to hold up pretty nicely, but I just feel a lot safer running those heavy duty ones from Black Ops machine. The next big accessory is the bent metal vented windshield with a power wiper and dome light. I made sure to add the power wiper in, and the dome light comes in really handy at night. That lights the whole entire cab up very, very nicely. And I also installed the washer fluid kit. Now when you do that, you have to swap the shocks, and these are smart shocks, so they had the cables. You just had to unplug them from down below. You unplug them, you swap the shocks, the left to the right to the left. And when you do that, because these cables will be coming out the other way, as in facing up instead of down, you just simply have to spin that orientation so the wires are back to the lower orientation as you see here. So that's not difficult to do. You just simply grab it and twist it, and that will give you space. The one thing though, this is a 72-inch machine, and I did have to trim the plastics. The reservoirs do touch if you don't trim the plastics, so that is something to be mindful of. It seems to be kind of an unknown online, and those plastics on a 72-inch machine do need to be trimmed absolutely when you swap the shocks. So specifically in regards to the wiring for the windshield and windshield wiper and fluid, I just have them right down here. And that left switch, I should say lower in this picture, the red one, that's for the rock lights. So the nice thing about having that position for the switches for the windshield wiper and the fluid is that the passenger, which often is my son, can just hit it as we're going, and I can keep driving. Gives them something to do. Next accessory as we work our way back are the Kemimoto fender flares. Those things were almost a must-do. After just one ride, I learned very quickly that without having those, the mud just cakes right inside and will get you good. If you're anywhere other than on the sand dunes, having these fender flares is definitely worth the time and effort to install. Now I added these Kemimoto side mirrors. I really like them. They're very similar to the Can-Am ones as far as shape and design. You can actually adjust them both up here on the swivel point, and the mirrors themselves swivel all different directions. So those are a great value item, being that they look just like the Can-Am OEM ones, but they're considerably less expensive from Kemimoto. The next thing is the easy door handle latches. These are definitely worth getting. Makes it a lot easier, especially for passengers that don't ride very often and aren't used to having to pull the straps to get the door open and closed. Now you see here I did not put the cover back in place. It just really wasn't worth it to me, but you can do that once you install these latches. And then moving from the door latches are the Kemimoto door bags. Have those on both sides. Those come in super handy, obviously for holding your drinks as well as any snacks, little tools. I actually put bags of earplugs in there for passengers as well, and even riding goggles every once in a while too. So it's just a nice spot to keep the quick access gear. Now I don't have them on right now because I was just riding out in the hot sand dunes, but the lower doors I typically do, so maybe I'll just throw a picture on the line there and show off the lower doors. And the upper soft cab windows, both by Kemimoto, are typically on this machine when it's cold weather, and I take them off during the warm weather. So that's the reason for this Velcro that's on the door. It's actually what is needed to hold the upper soft cab on. So now we're inside the machine. Next accessory to add is the Can-Am, specifically MTX 5-speaker stereo system. It's a nice little design where it's fairly simple to install because it's a one-piece unit here, and then you've got your front speakers up there in the front by the dash, and then you have the rear speakers that are right behind your ears. Sounds pretty good, not super bass, but does get loud, especially even if you have earplugs in, you can hear your music. The next accessory is the Kemimoto dash tablet holder and storage. Kind of nice, flips down, and it will store quite a bit of material inside here. I usually keep a cable in there because I do have a charge port so that I can plug in my cell phone, and it just routes underneath. The cable comes out underneath, so if I have that running, or even the tablet, so I can go constantly and not have to worry about the battery wearing out on me. Next accessory is the Can-Am rear view mirror. It actually works pretty well as far as lining up with all the components of the bent metal windshield, as you can see here. And then working our way down is the quick shifter gate shifter. This thing's kind of cool. You install this underneath the center console. You don't have to do anything as far as adjusting the linkage, anything like that for the shifter. You just simply install this and you're good to go. Cool thing about it is it just allows you to shift from reverse to low, or if you're moving along in high, you got to quickly shift up to reverse. Like if you're going up a hill and you got to go in reverse back down, it just makes it quicker and easier to get to that reverse shift from whatever gear that you're in. Nice handy product that's not too hard to install. Then making our way up, I've got the Kemimoto roof bag. This thing comes in handy for storing. I actually put my drone in here. Kind of keeps everything up here out of the way of mud. Next accessory to note is the Kemimoto center console between the shoulder bag. That comes in really handy for storing extra accessories. I actually put my Winch's tree saver line in here, as well as some WD-40 cans and some rags, etc., etc. Everything that stays in here stays out of the moisture, the mud, the sand, etc., etc. But it does get very hot, and you don't want to put any food in there. The next thing I installed was a battery terminal relocate. I just put it right up here because it sits above the passenger seat, but it's far enough back where it's not going to affect anybody or anything. Like you can't hit it, run into it, but it just makes it easier to get to in regards to jumping other people that might have a dead battery. It also comes in handy just for quickly connecting a trickle charger during winter storage. So my next accessory to list here is the UTV Direct vented rear poly windshield. I did end up having to trim it in order to fit the speakers in there, but it comes in handy. Now most of the time I'm running this thing actually closed. I don't have to typically open it up for venting, just because there's already so much airflow coming through from where I had to cut for the speakers. But it comes in handy for putting stickers on there and making it easy to see over the top of the other gear as we work our way back. I can't forget to mention the OEM Polysport roof. That actually works really nicely with the bent metal windshield. One thing I did end up doing was putting some trim, I guess I'll call it, some foam underneath, and that stops when water splashes in. It stops there instead of coming down and in through the cab. So that was something that I just put that foam in there with the adhesive on it, and does a great job holding it all in place. But the roof is pretty much a must-have if you want to be out in any inclement weather and want to stay out of the sun. And now we're at the back of the machine, and I have an AJK off-road triple pack out mounting plate. So as you can see, it actually could hold 3 of this style box. Now this is a cooler, but then you could put a couple of toolboxes, or you can do the medium double wide boxes as you have here. So that's pretty much a 3-position pack out mount. I also installed this rear bumper. Got it off from Amazon, so just like everything else, the links are down in the description. This is considerably less expensive than an OEM one, but I actually liked it because it covered the rear lights themselves. I just felt like if I was backing up and there happened to be a tree right here, it could potentially save those lights, and it actually has worked for me once so far. So that style bumper I find to be a little more functional than the narrower ones that just cover the center. And getting down to the last couple things, added a rear tow hook. That comes in handy for towing people, but also just for running a strap through for locking the machine down, especially in enclosed trailers. So I like having that there. It's not normal on an X3 XRS, but it does come in handy quite often. And the last thing to mention, after having my air intake manifold explode on me out in the dunes a few weeks ago, I finally installed RPM Power Sports intake plenum clamps on the intake plenum, and these things are supposed to keep that thing from popping apart again. And I'll put a little picture up that shows all the positions, because it takes several of them all the way around. They claim that you can install this where it is in the engine, and I did install those where they are without taking everything apart, but it was extremely difficult to get my arms in there. So I just want to give you a heads up on that. If you're going to do it the way that it is inside the machine, you might want to have somebody with little arms and little fingers on standby. So there's 30 accessories for you to add to your Can-Am Maverick X3 to make it more fun, bring up the utility, bring up the safety factors, and bring up the reliability. I hope you decide to add something that we talked about here to your Can-Am Maverick X3. If you have any questions or want to learn more about any of these items in further detail, go ahead and put it down in the comments below, and I'll try my best to respond as quickly as possible. Like I said, I've owned this thing now for about a year and a half, changed a few things back and forth, but overall I'm happy with the purchases that I made and the things that I've added to this machine. I feel very, very good about all of the items that I installed, how well they're holding up, and I feel like I've used everything multiple times, and it's definitely made this machine just that much more enjoyable. It's a blast with no accessories, but when you start putting these things on and making it your own, making it functional for however you're going to use it, it's just a machine that you just can't get enough of. I'll check you next time out on the trails.